It's time for some midweek mysticism. The most appropriate term that we use to describe Hashem is Ein Sof, literal translation, without end. And most people will tell you that that means that Hashem is infinite, and you'd be right. Infinite meaning Hashem is not bound by space. Hashem is not bound by time. And when you start to think that Hashem is infinite, you think of infinite power, infinite wisdom, infinite greatness, and of course you then think totally beyond our reach. There's no way we could have a personal relationship with an infinite entity, because the way that we process everything is by giving it definition, by making it finite. When you understand something, you give it parameters. This is how much I understand. When you experience something, that's within parameters. This is what I can feel or touch or hear or see. So if Hashem is Ein Sof, without any parameters or limits, naturally that implies that I'll never get anywhere close to him. If you had to accumulate all of the finite ability that exists and that has existed throughout history, be it within the human race, be it within all the spiritual beings that exist, you put all of that finite energy together, you still will be infinitely distant from Ein Sof, that which is infinite. And so many times we think of Hashem as aloof, as very distant and inaccessible. But we'd be missing the point, because our mystics teach us, Keshem sheyesh lo koyach bebilti bal gvul, kach yesh lo koyach bigvul, which means just as much as Hashem has the power to express or to be infinite, so he has the power to be finite. Now, what exactly does that mean? See, when we say Ein Sof, we mean that there are no boundaries, no limits. Rules, for example, are limits. We're bound by rules, whether they are official rules, whether they are the laws of nature, we're bound by rules. There's certain things that we cannot do. If somebody had to, for example, tell a person to jump off the roof, well, it might not be good advice, but it's doable. Whereas if somebody had to tell you from the ground to jump onto the roof, regardless of whether it's good advice or not, it's not doable. These are the boundaries, the parameters that we live in. So I don't have the ability to leap onto a roof from the ground. That limits me. Hashem is Ein Sof. That means that there are no rules, there are no limits. There's nothing that we should be able to say he cannot do. If we were to say that because he is infinite, he cannot come into our space and he cannot make himself accessible, that would be as bad as saying he cannot be infinite. In other words, we'd be applying a rule and a limitation to him. So in fact, when we say that Hashem is Ein Sof, without any bounds, without any rules, without any limits, we're actually saying that he's completely accessible. Not because he's finite, but because he can choose, and this is the brilliant thing about Hashem, he can choose to make infinite accessible to finite. He can choose to make his full capacity available to us. Where does he do that? So the primary place is in the Torah. The first word of the Ten Commandments, which is, of course, the first communication of Torah from Hashem to the Jewish people, is Anochi, I. And we're told that Anochi is an abbreviation of Ano Nafshi Kesavis Yehavis. I have taken my soul, written it, and given it to you. My soul, my infinite power, my real self, Hashem says, I'm making accessible to you every time you open a book and read my wisdom. Sounds impossible? That's Ein Sof. It doesn't have to be possible, and yet it is possible all at once.